Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. And welcome to another edition of the ODPH Entertainment Edition. I'm your host, Ken. I'm sitting across from me this week is the one and only intern himself, Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
Folks, we have a great show lined up for you, but we have a special guest in studio, so let's waste no time introducing him. You know him from IAmHorror on Facebook, Real IAmHorror on Twitter. It's the one and only Mike C.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
Thank you for coming back on the show. Social media, hashtag ODPHEE. Now, if we have Mike back on the show, there's only one reason and one reason only. We're talking horror movies. And there was a big trailer that came out a couple weeks ago. The schedules have finally aligned. So, Mike, why don't you talk to us about Halloween?
Halloween, the new sequel that's going to be a direct sequel to the original Halloween. By that, what we mean is they are going to be scrapping all of the sequels that have occurred.
Okay.
And we've got a brand new sequel that's going to follow 40 years after the original film.
Interesting. Now, I know in the trailer they actually reference this where they say, hey, wasn't he your brother or something like that?
Yeah, Michael Myers is no longer the brother of Laurie Strode. They've passed on that, and everything that we know from all the sequels and all the remakes never happened.
Good.
Now, it's kind of interesting to see that they're doing a complete retcon, kind of like how Days of Future Past was for X-Men, the franchise there. So now you're seeing that they're starting over. The only one they're acknowledging for this run is going to be the first movie.
That's right.
So it's kind of interesting to see what is going on with that. Now, we are talking spoilers, so if you haven't seen the trailer, you can pause this or join in the conversation. Hashtag ODPHE, whatever is your preference. So as we were jumping into the trailer, we're seeing now that there is a investigative group that wants to talk to Michael Myers, who's in an insane asylum at this point.
Right.
And for some reason, the head guy that is in charge of the group whips out the iconic Michael Myers mask to, I don't know, draw his attention, get a reaction out of him. For whatever reason, they're doing an investigation.
That's right. Yeah, it would appear that he's poking the bear with this one, something you don't do with Michael Myers.
No, definitely not. So, I mean, you can kind of see that this has like a cliched horror beginning in a sense, but nothing that you're going, oh, this is too hokey. This just makes sense to the storyline.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this. Again, the whole idea of scrapping all the sequels kind of has me a little concerned. Halloween has a following kind of like the Trekkies do with Star Trek. Of all the big horror conventions out there, the horror series that are out there, Halloween has the biggest following of them all. People critique it more than any of the other ones. There's an enormous fan base, and I'm a little bit worried that the direction they're going with this may end up hurting the fan base here. But we're going to see where it goes with this, and I'm very excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with the trailer. I mean, I'm not the biggest horror movie guy in the world, but I was definitely impressed by it. And I know that Danny McBride is the guy who wrote this current version of Halloween.
That's right.
And to see where he kind of made some very, old school scenes in there, I guess is the only way I can kind of describe it. Like, it was kind of more focused on the psychological aspect rather than the straight up gore and violence that you kind of see in the more, I don't want to say traditional, but more recent horror movies.
Right. And, this is something I talk about a lot. Horror movies had, in their heyday, the best era of horror movies ever took place between, I'd say, 1973 and 1984. And all of those movies, they based everything around atmosphere and suspense, and it's what made them so good. After that, they tried to almost go bigger with it and gave fans more gore and violence. And in my opinion, there really hasn't been too many good horror movies made after 1984, and it's because of what they did with it. The original Halloween was built on suspense. There's very little blood. There's very little gore. It's all suspense. And Danny McBride all along has been talking about how that's the direction he wanted to go. He wanted to make Michael Myers scary again, and he never found him to be scary when he was Laurie Strode's brother.
Right. And that's an interesting take, too, because you would think that, the family aspect in that would have, driven more of the psychological point home. But if he's feeling it isn't, I mean, this is kind of a unique take he's going to show for it.
Right. I mean, John Carpenter always said right along that that was the only. It was just an idea to make a sequel. Mm-hmm. That's why she became Michael's sister, was to carry on the story. And of course, all of the sequels followed suit with that. And that's basically what the narrative was throughout the entire franchise history. And now they're taking that all away. So it's a big gamble, but we'll see how it pays off.
I mean, it can definitely have some payoff down the road. I mean, as we see more with the trailer, too, they're showing Jamie Lee Curtis's character is, kind of set in suburbia, but she is waiting for Michael's imminent escape.
No, yeah, she's been grinding her axe and ready to fight him for years.
Yeah, and she's almost set up like her own practice area, too. I mean, you see her shooting a shotgun, getting ready, and you can see kind of dummies that have, been the result of her work, so to speak. And kind of seeing where she's going with that.
Yeah, and everything that I've read on Twitter, coming from Jamie Lee herself, the great Donald Pleasance, who played Dr. Loomis in the original series, passed away in 1995. But Dr. Loomis was always the Ahab to Michael's Moby Dick. And now that he's gone, what they're doing with this one is Jamie Lee is actually going to almost take over for Dr. Loomis. She's the town crazy. Nobody believes her. And she's preparing herself for Michael getting out and coming home, and the devastation that he's going to bring. And so she's kind of the town protector now, kind of what Dr. Loomis was in the original.
Yeah, and I think it's a very nice, nod to her, too, because, I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis has always been synonymous with the Halloween franchise, and now this is going to be a different take for her.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my friends and I have been joking that this is almost like they're remaking Halloween H2O, because she was the broken down, terrified, drunk, Laurie Strode that was having trouble for 20 years dealing with what Michael did to her. And it almost seems like they're going in the same direction with that, but also it's going to be completely different this time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely a different feel, and I think that, this is going to definitely be, just a different take. I mean, that's the only way I can really kind of describe it, that I think it's going to really stand out and can really only help with the franchise, too, because if you're doing a big reboot, you want to reboot everything. But with mindset to the original concept. Yeah,
and I mean the original, it went as far as it could go. Really, I mean, what else were they going to do? What else could they possibly have done with it? They killed off Laurie at one point, and he went after all of his relatives, and they pretty much did everything they could, and it was getting so hokey. They get to hit the reset button this way, which again, the whole franchise was based on the two of them being siblings and all of her family members that he was going after. But they get to reset, they get to start over, and kind of go from there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, more so with the trailer, too. I mean, we see that Michael escapes from the prison bus that he's on, and now he's running through the streets. And I know Jamie Lee Curtis's character is, been keeping an eyeful watch for this moment. And then when I believe somebody goes, "Oh, did you hear about the bus crash?" And they go, "What bus crash?" And she's like, "Michael was on it," like instantly.
Right.
That I think that, I mean, that just kind of goes to show, they're having enough nods to the old school style of horror movies with kind of a fresh take on it. I mean, it didn't look like a dated piece from what I was watching.
No, it didn't look dated. And the thing that impresses me the most, and everything I've been reading about all of this, Danny McBride and director David Gordon Green have been saying that although they're going to be having nods to the original series, all the different movies that were in it, they paid very close attention to the details of the original movie. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was one of the scariest scenes in the original movie and in horror history is Jamie Lee Curtis cowering in a closet and Michael trying to break in. And her only defense is to take a clothes hanger and stab him in the eye with it. Later in the original movie, she pulls off his mask and you can see the damage done to his eye. Well, the new movie, if somebody lightened the poster for the movie with Michael's face, what you see now, it's very dark. When they lightened it, you could see that his left eye was it was damaged. It was scarred over, and it was almost like he only had one eye. So they paid attention to that detail. She still has the scar on her arm where he stabs her. So there was a lot of little details that they had that went back to the original. Even one of the scenes in one of the teaser trailers where Jamie Lee's walking up to her shooting gallery, she's singing a song that she sings early on in the original movie where she's walking down the street after she drops off a package at the Myers house that her dad is trying to sell. So there's all these little details and things that go back to the beginning, and that's what impresses me the most is how much they paid attention to that and added it into the movie.
And especially with Danny McBride writing it to him, he's not known for being a horror, involved in that kind of aspect. I mean, you always know him from his comedy, but he's really looks like he's taken the time to really nail the franchise and really nail like everything that will please new fans and old.
Yes, he has, and I've been very vocal about him as well. I'm not a fan of him whatsoever. In fact, the only thing I've ever liked him in was his role in the most recent Alien movie, Alien Covenant. I did like his character in that, but overall, I've never been a fan of his. And everything that he's set up to this point, it really makes me realize what a fan he was of the original, and he's made me a believer in what he's doing. So I really can't wait to see where they go with this and what they do with it, and see if it is going to be, in fact, as scary as the original.
Well, I think from the little bits that we saw in the trailer, I think they're in the right direction. I mean, where they show after Michael has escaped and he gets his mask back, he's walking in through the bathroom and he sees he drops the teeth over the stall. And you kind of know that, okay, now it's a little subtle thing that is a big moment.
Right.
And kind of really setting the tone for the rest of the film, which, I mean, for a horror movie, especially one that you want to talk about iconic films in the horror genre, you got your Friday the 13th, you got your Nightmares on Elm Street, and you got Halloween. I mean, that's like your trifecta right there.
Right.
That this is so much of a big deal that you got to nail it out of the park, and especially because, I mean, the last couple runs of Halloween really haven't been the best ones.
No, they haven't. And a big part of that, I think, is that the previous, I want to say Halloween H2O, I think, started the trend in 1998, where that movie, Halloween Resurrection, and both of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies came out in August. Mm-hmm. This one comes out on October 19th, which is a week and a half before Halloween.
Prime time.
Yes, and it's going to make a big difference with the box office returns on this. One of the biggest, most anticipated horror movies that I can ever remember was Stephen King's It that came out last year. And although I don't know that it'll reach those heights, I have a feeling this might be the biggest Halloween movie box office wise that there's ever been. There's more anticipation for this movie than anything I've ever seen when it comes to a Halloween movie or a slasher movie in general.
Well, I think they've done a great job with the marketing of it. I think that the trailer was just enough that it didn't give away everything. I mean, there was a lot shown in it. Don't get me wrong about that. But I think it's enough that it would pique the interest of somebody that really has no idea about the franchise. And I think that if you've been a huge fan of it, like you have been for years, there's enough in there that you can go, okay, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. Not kind of going, maybe your skepticism is down a little bit, and just kind of seeing where they're going with it.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like you almost have to bring in a new audience to watch it, and you also have to convince the older audience that's seen the movies to not go, oh my god, another one.
Right, and the fact that they're resetting everything, is going to help with that. Again, the longtime fans of the franchise, if they don't deliver with this, if this movie ends up not being what we're hoping it's going to be, it's going to kill the franchise. But at the same time, if they're going to deliver the way that they've promised to, this could be the best sequel that there's been. So, I'm anxious for that. I can't wait to see.
Yeah, there's so much of an upscaling with this too, because especially they're showing it in October. This is the first time they've done that in forever.
20 years.
That I can remember. And it's perfect timing. I mean, if you're going to be talking horror movies, October is the month to release anything. I know there's been some success with other movies. I believe Get Out came out in February, the year it came out too, and I know It came out in September
of 2017.
Yeah, so I mean, it just depends, because I think a lot of times they try going in the summertime, and summer is kind of tough because you always think you're blockbuster films.
Right.
You can take a variation of sequels, and like right now, especially in the comic book era, there's been so many of those coming out.
Right.
That is really tough to really kind of maintain that genre at the box office, because people aren't thinking horror movies in summer typically at the box office is more geared towards kids are out of school. There's a lot more family films. There's a lot more bigger franchises, I guess. They're more, I don't want to say pop, because I think that's kind of a weird way to say it, but more popular, across the board, trying to get more mainstream fans. But for the horror ones, if there's a great product, they're going to show up in full force. There's no question about that. I mean, you look at Get Out, you look at It.
Right.
I mean, there's been such a resurgence, and especially with Halloween, like we said, it's one of the trifecta of horror movies, that when this comes out, and so far everything we've seen, just from the little, like you say, with Michael Myers' eye mask, to just a little subtle thing with the teeth, to even the one scene where the babysitter's trying to shut the closet door, and she can't.
And it won't close.
And then you see Michael. I mean, it's such a classic moment for a horror movie, but it didn't look dated. I mean, that's the biggest thing I took away from it, because, I mean, obviously, if you're retconning everything that's been out since the original Halloween, and the original Halloween came out in
1978.
So you're talking literally how many years difference?
40.
To make it seem like it's so close, and it didn't look dated at all. That was a true sign that, okay, maybe it's in the right direction. I mean, I'm not the biggest horror movie guy in the world, and I'll be the first one to tell you that. But I'm very interested to see where this one is going.
Yeah, I honestly I cannot tell you how much I cannot wait to see this movie. This is going to be huge. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fantastic. So I can't wait to see what they do with it.
Definitely. I mean, I definitely want to go check it out. Pat, you got any thoughts on this?
Not my cup of tea, but I might give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something like I said, Pat and I are both not big horror guys. Just never have been, really. But this one is kind of, I'm more inclined to give it a shot. I mean, I always like the Stephen King books, and when they, came to the big screen, I've checked them out, and they've been phenomenal. But for this one, too, it's like with Michael Myers, there's so much riding on it, too, because if for example, if this does not do well, and I think it's going to do great, too. I think it's going to do big numbers. But if this doesn't do well, I mean, what does it say if people want to start talking Nightmare on Elm Street remakes? I know that we just had one a couple of years ago, but now is like the prime time to bring back the classics.
It's like when the original Halloween came out. After that is when all the copycats came that flooded the market and eventually kind of killed the slasher genre at that time, but everybody copied it. So if they've been talking about remaking A Nightmare on Elm Street again because the last one was a bomb.
Yeah, last one was not good.
No. And really the remake of Friday the 13th, although a lot of people liked it, I was not a fan of that, and they were talking about redoing that as well. There's a big lawsuit going on between Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, the writer and the director of the original. The huge lawsuit. Everything was frozen on that. The video game was frozen.
Oh yeah, so that came out over the weekend. The video game they put out.
No more DLC.
No more support for DLC. Anything for it. You can still buy it. You can still play it, but nothing else is coming out for it.
Yeah,
really.
They said they're not even allowed to build another rock or tree in the game at this point. So Friday the 13th, eventually that'll get settled, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Huh.
Actually, Larry Zerner, who played Shelley in Friday the 13th Part 3, is now he's the one that gave Jason his mask in the series. So he kind of has an iconic place in the history of that. He's a entertainment lawyer now, and on Twitter, he has posted some very interesting things about that case. He actually liked one of my tweets. So
definitely. Well,
thank you, Larry.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously worth checking out because especially when we're talking about the video game aspect. I mean, Michael Myers was in a video game.
Michael Myers is in Dead by
Daylight.
He is one of the DLC characters in that.
Yeah, it's essentially a game where they take 4 characters, put them in an enclosed map, and you have to turn generators on to get power going so you can open the doors and escape the killers.
Interesting. It's definitely a unique concept. But in closing, though, Mike, what's your final thoughts on the movie?
I've said it several times here already, but I just can't wait to see it. It's Halloween's my favorite franchise. The original movie is my favorite movie of any genre. It's been 9 long years, the longest we've ever gone in between Halloween sequels, and I cannot wait.
Now, if our listeners want to get at you on social media, how can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook at IAmHorror. You can also find me on Twitter at Real IAmHorror.
So definitely interact with Mike and hit us up on social media. Hit him up on social media too as well. We want to know what's your thoughts on the Halloween trailer that you saw and what's your thoughts on the movie coming out. Mike, thank you again for joining us here on the ODPH.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
Anytime. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Mike Pappy from Rye Bread, and you're listening to the ODPH.
Coming back for the second segment on this week's ODPH Entertainment Edition, and Netflix had another hit on their hands.
Oh, boy, did they ever.
We're going to be talking Luke Cage Season 2, so if you've not seen it yet, pause this episode, make sure to binge watch, and then join the conversation, because we are going to be talking spoilers on the show.
Oh, yeah.
So, going into that, there was so much going on with Luke Cage Season 2. Obviously, Season 1 came out, was phenomenal as well, that, you saw the rise of him in Harlem, that he was, a symbol of hope for for everybody there, and he was really kind of trying to clean up everybody's act that was in town. So obviously, seeing him, Luke Cage, emerge as a hero and kind of break through that he wasn't a hero that had to wear a mask. He was more of a public eye hero.
Not so much wear a mask, but wear a hoodie.
Yeah, he was wearing a hoodie, and he was just kind of more becoming, like almost like a myth that is a real life. That he was just, everybody knew him around Harlem, and to see how he took out Cottonmouth, who was played by Mashallah Ali, who was phenomenal, and Mariah, who was played by Alfre Woodard. I mean, it was just a great season overall. And then Diamondback 2, they had so many villains going on in season 1 that it really just kind of stuck out, and really the bar was set very high.
Yeah.
So now coming into season 2, it's after the Defenders. I mean, after season 1, there was kind of like, Luke Cage went to jail, and after Defenders, he was out, and they kind of didn't really explain, even though they did kind of touch upon it a little bit, that the file that was found at Pop's barbershop finally got to the right people. So he's out of jail. I mean, at least that's the way I took it.
Yeah.
But going into it, I mean, Pat, what was your thoughts on the season overall?
Great season overall. I know there were some reviews online that were less than stellar, borderline, hated the thing, lowest rated season they've ever done for a Marvel Netflix show. I couldn't disagree more. While it wasn't over the moon, I'm going and telling every single person, even if they're not a fan of the Marvel Netflix stuff, to go watch it. It was still good.
It was very good. I mean, was it the Daredevil, Punisher, kind of super gritty, super tough drama? No, but I think where it really kind of stood out was this kind of had more of a, I want to say like more of a superhero crime element to it that, wasn't as, it just had a different feel than season 1.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those scenarios like season 1. It kind of presented itself to Luke Cage as, okay, here's the villain, here's the issue, punch it. Whereas this, in the case in this season, it was, okay, here's this issue, there's 9 sides to it, figure it out. Here's this other issue, here's 10 sides to it.
Yeah, I mean, this season became multi-layered for a lot of different reasons. And I mean, I think it helped that the supporting cast really stood out. I mean, Mike Coulter does an awesome job as Luke Cage to begin with, but Theo Rossi as Shades,
holy moly almighty,
was the co-MVP of this season.
Easily. I think it didn't hit me until towards the end of the season, but I was like, I want more of him in this show. Yeah,
he obviously had a lot going on. I mean, at this point, he has the romance going on with Mariah and the power struggle that they are having with Mustafa Shakir, who is playing Bushmaster, who is an equal power to Luke Cage this season.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a surprising thing, too, because he shows up on screen and he's, threatening Luke Cage and all this, and then he starts doing, like, I don't know, judo, something, mixed martial arts of some sort, and he's flipping around.
Yeah, he had a unique fighting style to him, but it also took him by surprise because he was just about 3 steps ahead of everybody, it seemed like. And then when he finally meets Luke Cage, he knows he has to take him out publicly to ruin the image, because at this point, Luke Cage is just a public superhero. I don't want to say a reality star, because I don't think that's fair, even though they were kind of setting it up like that.
There is a bit of like a TMZ style aspect to it. I mean, there is an app in the season where it's a Harlem Hero app or something like that, where essentially if you use this app, if you see Luke Cage, you take a photo and it gets posted to this app and it tells you where he is, which to me seems like the worst idea possible for a superhero.
Absolutely, because I mean, he's still now getting adjusted to his fame. I know that they're kind of having like some mainstream shows watch him. I know there's like this ESPN moment where he's working out for the head coach of the New York Jets.
Yeah.
And they're also doing something where he's getting a Nike contract thrown at him. So, I mean, it's kind of shifting that he's going from being, a hero with pure intent to an eventual transition to a hero for hire, which is what he does in the comics as well. Because, I mean, at this point, he has to defend Piranha, who hires him to protect him at one point from Bushmaster and his army when they're making their takeover and their move on Mariah and Shades. And we can't speak enough about Shades, too. The story of him and Comanche this season obviously was one of the high points.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just how multi-layered, and just when, everything is going right, everything goes wrong. And
in the worst way possible.
Yeah, when now you see that the, house that Mariah has built is just come crashing down around her.
The proverbial house of cards.
Yes, to where you see she finally just cracks. And is just, I mean, it's the fall from grace, and just what happens now when there's nothing to lose. And obviously, when the just bloody battle between her against Bushmaster's, I don't want to say, I don't know if it's his family or
associates.
I mean, it's just one of the more just like, serious moments of the series. That, I mean, at this point, they're just going back and forth, and there's just a lot of people getting hurt and killed in the show.
It was definitely graphic. It was definitely surprising. I know the one scene that stands out to me is when, not with Bushmaster, but with Mariah towards, I think it was episode 10 or 11 or so.
Yeah, in Gwen's.
Yeah, in Gwen's diner or wherever it is, where she shows up, people get killed, and then she douses the guy in, what was that, alcohol?
Yeah, it was the Bushmaster rum.
She douses him in rum and then lights him on fire. And he's screaming because he's not dead yet. And she's like, God, don't you ever die. And she just shoots him point blank.
Yeah, I mean, Alfre Woodard was playing phenomenal as Mariah 2 this season, too. And she definitely stood up. But Shades was just kind of going through, where does he go now? And he's so torn because, I mean, this whole storyline with Comanche, who is being an undercover for the New York police, who is trying to get dirt on Mariah, I mean, that backfires and just explodes in the worst way possible.
Right, and that whole plot twist was awesome to watch and was great because, the officer gets shot, and then he's standing there, and Comanche's kind of, what do we do now? So Shade starts going through what you would expect a typical criminal to do. He starts running through, all right, well, it's night. That's good. Nobody's around. That's good. There's no cameras. That's around. All right. And so then he starts going through the story of what they're going to say if they get asked about it. And he goes, all right, here's what we're going to say. And he goes, all right, this happened, that happened. And then with his dying breath, he pulled up his gun and he shoots him.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, I mean, you just saw there was just more layers to Shades than originally you would think.
Right. It'll be interesting to see where he goes from here because towards, I think it was episode 12 or 13, where he's in the barbershop and he's kind of telling Luke and Co. what's going on. And they're like, why should we trust you? You've done everything, all this stuff against us. Why should we trust you? He's like, listen, I got nothing. That whole part of my life, that whole world, the underworld, I can't do anything for it or with it. Everyone knows I'm a snitch.
Yeah, and it just kind of sees the fall. Like I say, it's a fall from grace for him too. Because I mean, obviously at this point, I mean, there's just so much moving and shaking going on that when the dust finally clears, Mariah is killed off by her own daughter.
Which that was a plot twist I did not see coming. Let alone introducing her daughter, but then just the arc her daughter went on, where it was from the innocent, maybe knew what was going on, but didn't want to believe it, didn't want to know, to I'm killing my mother with, what was that, pasta sauce or something?
No, Gabrielle Dennis, who played Tilda on the show, did a great job, and it was kind of very subtle that, I mean, her character had more of like a holistic medicine background. Yeah. So there was some kind of concoction that she poisoned Mariah in prison.
Because I know the recipe she read off of was shown at least 3 times. I know she found it, she's like, oh, then she found it again, and then she actually made it.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of just a weird concoction, but she was working very quietly behind the scenes that she ultimately took her mother down and then thought that she was going to wind up inheriting what the fortune was going to be, and it turned out not to be.
Right, and then the rather interesting last name she decided to go with.
Yes.
Tilda Johnson.
Yes, and just denying anything of the Stokes name, just starting over, and just where she goes next season was something to watch too. Another MVP of this season, though, had to be Simone Missick, who played Misty Knight.
Yeah.
She knocked it out of the park. I mean, you just saw at the end of season 1 that she got injured where she was losing her arm. Now you see in season 2 that she did lose her right arm. And just the kind of the struggle she's going through adjusting to it.
So yeah, because there's one point where she's like, I'm a righty. I write with my left hand. I dribble a basketball with my right hand. I shoot with my right hand.
Yeah, and just kind of seeing how she, comes back to form too. I mean, she's working with Colleen Wing, who does a great job too. I mean, I'm really excited to see if they do a Daughters of the Dragon Netflix series, which I think they should.
No, yeah, it was definitely interesting to see her with Colleen Wing, because there was one moment where they were in a bar and they were just having a heart-to-heart. They were just talking or something, and this guy tries starting a fight with her, and she goes to swing, and she hits him with the left, and then she goes to hit him with the right, which is natural thing to do. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing there.
Yeah, and she just seeing how she's adjusting to it, and then finally she gets her cybernetic arm, which if you read Marvel Comics, you know she has one in the show, and just kind of seeing that was a very cool moment. And like I said, Misty was just the backbone of the show this season as well, too.
Yeah.
And just added another layer to the drama in the show, which, I mean, I thought overall, I mean, the plot was pretty normal. It wasn't something over the top. It just had a different feel than season 1.
It was definitely multi-layered, which was cool, and definitely the way they introduced Bushmaster and kind of he showed up. They didn't give you everything about him. You didn't know everything about him, but it was kind of like we're going to give you little appetizers of his past, little appetizers of why he's doing what he's doing, because it was, I'm doing it for this reason. and then and then it gets fleshed out a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I mean, that backflash to Jamaica in the mid-'80s was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely established him. I mean, but it's tough coming into the role because, I mean, with how dramatic and dynamic Cottonmouth was,
right?
That anybody coming into that role of the, quote-unquote major antagonist is going to have tough shoes to fill. I thought Bushmaster did a good job doing it.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely.
I mean, I thought the acting was on point and for what they needed to do. The only thing that I've seen some criticism for is just it was strong guy versus strong guy.
Right.
But you kind of have to establish that Luke Cage is getting tested at his best because what Bushmaster's trying to do is beat him at his own game.
Oh yeah.
And if you can beat him publicly, which he did.
Oh yeah, because if you remember, he got his butt whooped the first time they met, and like the very next episode, DVDs were getting sold of his butt whooping on the middle of the street in Harlem.
Yeah, and just the public image that, he went from being the savior of Harlem to now that he's disgraced almost, and just kind of seeing where Luke goes from there, and he's not handling. I mean, that's one driving point that I don't know if I really kind of dug the season, which resonated with me, was his just internal anger issue.
Yeah,
that he couldn't handle that he got beat, and he couldn't handle that somebody was better than him.
I don't think it was necessarily so much just that. It was just nothing. It was the case of, like, I think we've all been there where anything that can go wrong will go wrong. You're trying to do right. You're trying to fix things. You're trying to make them better, and it just feels like the world and outside forces, higher powers or what have you, are just doing everything they can to prevent that from happening. He's trying to make Harlem a better place. He's trying to make it, the place he dreams it to be or aspires it to be. And just everything keeps getting thrown at it from stopping it.
Yeah, everything he's doing until finally, when all the smoke is cleared, Bushmaster has left back for Jamaica. So we don't exactly know what's going to happen with him if he's going to return.
I think he will at some point, but I think given what happened to him, and just because there was one point in the show where they were kind of alluding to how much damage the Nightshade, which was the plant, drug, whatever it was that he was getting his powers from, how much damage it was doing to his body, and just how they almost made it feel like, or gave it the sense that you're one more away from kicking the bucket.
Yeah, because in the comics, his power source eventually kills him. So
I genuinely thought he was going to die because the Dr. Tilda gave him a vial or whatever, a needle with, concentrated super Nightshade or whatever. She's like, here, this is a higher dosage, but use it in small quantities. And it was kind of hinting at, you use this all at once, you're going to die. And I fully expected him to just go, you know what? Screw it.
Yeah. But we're not exactly sure what's going to happen with him, but he's off the board. Mariah was taken out in prison by her own daughter.
Oh, boy.
So Shades, he had a fall from grace, and in fact, the plea deal that he cut went up in smoke too, and Mariah was killed. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. So when the smoke is cleared, it's just left to Luke versus Tilda, and Luke is awarded Harlem's Paradise.
Which is going to be interesting to see because, he wants to work from the inside. He wants to kind of fix things from the inside, but we've seen that before in other forms of media. It doesn't always work.
No, the public perception is now there's a change, and now he's not going to be the hero that everybody wants him to be.
He definitely there was definitely a different feel to him with the final shot of the season.
Yeah, I think at the final shot of the season, he realizes he's become what he didn't want to become.
Yeah.
And now is the question of, is he still a hero? Which is an underlying theme of the entire season, because everything he's doing, he's kind of getting questioned because now he's such a public figure.
Right.
That it's going to be interesting to see, because the only thing I can describe of this is there was a comic run that Daredevil took over Hell's Kitchen as the Kingpin when Wilson Fisk was not there. And how that ended wasn't exactly the best comic story I've read.
Right.
And I believe it was Shadowland, which that just got messy in the hand, and who knows. But I will say, though, the footnotes of this season, though, like I said, Misty Knight and Shades was the MVPs of this season by far.
I think if I had to take a guess what they're going to do with Shades, because it's kind of up in the air, I would like to see, and this is just me doing a little bit of what I would like to see, I'd like to see him almost help Luke Cage out, because he can't do anything with the criminal underworld anymore. They know he's a snitch. Nobody's going to trust him. I would like to maybe see him team up with Luke Cage a little bit every now and then as you need to figure out what the bad guys or the underside is doing. You don't know who to go to. You don't know where to go. I know some people. I got some connections still.
Yeah, that could be definitely a possibility. For season 3, I know we're already talking way down the road because, who knows what's going to happen there. But I think that overall, though, it's going to be interesting to see now how he handles being the one thing he hates. And that's, being the crime boss, being somebody that is not looked upon in a good light, and how he's going to handle that, especially with his peers.
Right.
Because we did see Iron Fist appear this season, and that was such a cool nod to the comics too.
Oh,
when
yeah.
he made his run through and they did their team up. Which, I mean, the action in there is always top point, and the soundtrack. I mean, the soundtrack was very different this season.
Yeah.
It just had a different feel. But
Yeah.
I will say, though, their musical guests, I mean, they had Stephen Marley on, Faith Evans and Jadakiss have a great song out, too. KRS-One and Rakim. I mean, I know I'm missing a couple others. The show still had the great music on it. And I thought that was definitely something to just like another character on the show. It just does so well with it. But it just had a different feel to it. That would be the only thing I would take away. And the only other thing I didn't really like is I didn't like some of the dialogue, how it was written this year. I just thought that, like, when they showed just, you know, how quickly Mariah would just fall from grace and just, she'd go from being very stoic to very just, you know.
Yeah, forget it. I'm going to go, you know what, to the wall.
Yeah, just, you know, completely just everything hits the fan, and just kind of seeing how that was. But, I mean, I don't think it's anything that would be detrimental. I mean, if I have to give the show a grade, I give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I agree with that.
I think it's a lot better than some of the places I've seen give show writing for it, but I think overall it's definitely worth a watch. And we have to give a quick shout out to Justin Swain, who plays Detective Mark Bailey. He's been liking a couple things on our Instagram page, so thanks for checking us out, or Justin, should I say. I wasn't going to call you by your character's name, but thank you for checking us out. But overall, you should check out Luke Cage Season 2 on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Worth checking out. We're going to take a quick break. Hit us up on social media. Let us know what you think of Season 2. We're going to be right back.
It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward, no steps back.
Hey, this is Vince, the Common Man Seattle, a local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast.
We knew right where we'd be, floating on the airwaves, you see. It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward and no steps back. We knew right where we'd be.
Coming back, time to talk a little Cloak and Dagger on the ODPH Entertainment Edition.
Boy.
Yeah, it's obviously becoming one of our favorite shows on here.
Yeah.
And I will tell you what, it's definitely not the typical Marvel show.
No.
That it's been very surprising. I mean, Aubrey Joseph and Olivia Holt have been knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
And we've been saying it. And now, I mean, they've kind of really developed into, they're now kind of getting a sense of direction where they're going.
Well, now you're starting to get a little bit of backstory into Cloak.
Yeah, you're kind of starting to see where, you know, he's going, and you're getting a little more backstory of there's more to his family that just meets the eye, because now they've been doing the whole, like, dream sequence, astral plane. I don't know how exactly you want to describe it.
They're not in the here and now.
Right, but they've been kind of comparing notes of what each other saw. And when, you know, Daggers sees, you know, his question about, you know, her dad and, you know, the Roxxon cover-up, which now we're convinced there's a full cover-up going on.
Yeah, because the thing of it is if you remember back when there was an actual oil spill and whatnot in the Gulf Coast, you know, there was a lot going on with that. There was a lot of investigations and whatnot. This time it was a full-blown, like, it wasn't just an oil spill. No, the full-blown thing sank. Like, and there's, to our knowledge, and at least to this point in the show, there's been nothing about it.
Yeah, there's been no mention about it, which is kind of weird. But on this, that you kind of see there's more of a thing going on. And then Cloak is asking Dagger, you know, what about this vision? And she kind of alludes to, yeah, I think something happened to my dad at Roxxon. That,
right.
You know, they're not exactly the most up-and-up people.
I'll say there was more to his death than just he was talking on his phone and swerved into the other lane.
Mm-hmm. And then now they're kind of seeing where you see the background that Tandy's mom's boyfriend is actually working on a case against Roxxon to go dig up what actually happened that night. So as that's progressing on, you're kind of seeing that now Cloak is kind of figuring out a way to get to Detective Connors, who is actually the detective who killed Cloak's brother.
Okay, yep.
And Tandy is giving him kind of a crazy idea about getting, you know, finally his bike being stolen, and he kind of comes up to something which gets a little bit crazy, that he kind of freezes at the last minute, and he eventually goes back and he deals with his dad, who on the show is really, you know, it kind of seems like he now has more of a backstory than he knows what to do with. Because now we're kind of seeing that as Cloak is now meeting with his dad is fearing that he's going to fall down the path of crime, and he takes him back to some old friends that he used to hang out with.
Right.
And you kind of see that there's a little more...
There's more than meets the eye.
Yes, that is going on there. And you kind of see that there's going to be, what Cloak's dad got him out of and wanted to get him away from. And he's really trying to show Cloak that there's a different way to going than, crime, which, I mean, is completely off base from...
Well, yeah, it's what the father sees and what the father thinks is going on, so it's natural to think that.
Yeah, but he does see something, though, while he's, I believe they're in the 9th Ward.
Yeah.
They said on the show, that he actually sees a cloak that was meant for his brother.
Oh, yep.
That now is going to be... that I think will eventually become his cloak that he uses.
Presumably, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like a throwaway thing that they had around, but he kind of sees that they're working on something to finish it in his brother's honor.
There's that familial tie.
Yeah, so there's definitely something going on there, and you can definitely see that with Cloak, there's finally kind of a backstory, because I feel it's been so Dagger-centric going on in the beginning here.
Well, understandably so, because, I mean, it's quite the jump to go from the innocent little girl coming from ballet practice or a ballet recital to, I'm hanging out in a church and selling drugs now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now he's now kind of developed the story, and now he's meeting with the detective known as Mayhem, and I think they're going to finally make a play for the cop that killed Cloak's brother.
Yeah, I would guess so.
And Tandy's story finally, after she gets into a big fight with Cloak, I mean, the last about 7-10 minutes of the episode was probably the best that the show has done thus far. And they really kind of show that Tandy's mom now breaks up with her lawyer boyfriend that's been putting the case together. Tandy goes to the office to try seeing him, and when she goes to the window, she sees that he is murdered by somebody posing as a delivery person. Everything is set on fire, so now everything is just completely out the window. And then at this point, Tandy is just, she's now fought with Cloak. She's now kind of thinking just absolutely the worst things possible. And you see her at a pier with chains locked to her feet, and you see her jump in the water. But she's emerged with a dagger. That she's now apparently cut everything off, and she's now kind of found a sense of purpose. That she really has decided, no, this is not the way I want to go out.
Uh-huh.
And she's making a mission to go get Roxxon.
Yep.
And she goes back and she tries recovering whatever file she can, and she's really kind of saying, no, I've hit rock bottom. Now there's the only way
she's
I can go.
She's got a purpose.
She now has purpose, and she's like, I'm not going to let myself fall like this. I'm going to pick myself up and go. So the show itself, like I said, has been great thus far. The music has really been something to it. I definitely recommend it highly. And I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, it's, same with me. It can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, so definitely, if you got the time, check out Cloak and Dagger on Freeform. I believe it's on a couple platforms right now to catch up if you have not seen it already. So get caught up. It's four episodes thus far. Definitely worth your while. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
Hot lips touching, cool thighs feeling, shudder running up, her spine spinning, long day to a long night, but I'm not stopping till I get it right.
Now, before we get into one-shots, Pat, you want to touch up on a story we were talking about last week?
Yeah, so of course last week we talked about the report from Collider about, because of the lack of success, I guess you could say, of Solo, that the Lucasfilm was putting a pause on any future spin-off movies. Well, an article came out from The Hollywood Reporter on the 22nd, which basically said, and I'm going to read from their article, they haven't slowed development, but they're licking their wounds, according to one of their sources with knowledge of Lucasfilm's thinking. They're regrouping, and they're figuring out the direction of the movies beyond the final installment of the main series films, that being Episode 9, which is scheduled for release on December 20th, 2019. Quote, it doesn't mean those spin-offs don't happen. It just means they're trying to figure out how to make and market them differently. They go on to reference, in the case of Boba Fett spinoff, the project is still being developed, with Simon Kinberg and James Mangold writing the script, with the plan being for Mangold to direct. The filmmaker's prepping to shoot his next period racing drama, Ford versus Ferrari, but it's still in works. And I even read a rumor earlier that the Kenobi movie might still happen, but there's some little bit more issues going with that one, just trying to get people, and what with Ewan McGregor being done. But I read a rumor that could possibly drop on Disney's streaming service.
Interesting. So basically what we're saying is now the plan is now shifted from, instead of being on complete hold, it's just a retooling. You're just kind of hitting the reset button.
Yeah.
You want to see how exactly you want to market it. It's like for a movie like Boba Fett, which is not exactly outside the Star Wars fan universe.
Right, but he's not as recognizable, I would say,
Right.
as Han Solo is. Han Solo is one that even if you're someone who's just casually seen the films a couple of times, you know who Han Solo is. Boba Fett, odds are you probably don't.
Probably not, but at least this gives them some time to rework and make sure they get it right. So, I mean, because you can't really judge everything by how Solo did.
No.
Because Solo was, I mean, you got to take the movie for what it was. It was a fun movie. Was it supposed to be the summer blockbuster? I mean, they were juggling around dates and directors. I mean, there's just
Right, it was in between. It was right after Infinity War. Deadpool had just happened. So that one, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff not in its favor. So to see that they're actually going to keep going with these side projects and kind of go, okay, let's find the best way to do this and put the best product out. Okay, I'm completely okay with that.
So
because
am I.
It's just to scrap everything just because one movie didn't do as well as others. I mean, it still made how much millions?
A bunch.
Yeah, I mean, you can't judge it by one. That's one case that you just got to say, okay, that was a foul ball. Let's go back to the plate and see what we can swing at.
Yep.
All right, so why don't we get into those one shots? You want to lead us off?
Sure. This past week I went with a Bry Guy Signal, of course, for the comics edition of ODPH, what we talk about. Went and saw Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom with him.
Okay, now I am not a fan of this franchise,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
All right, tell me how it was.
So, of course, I will get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, pause, go see the movie, come back. It was good. It was very interesting. It was a movie that dealt with kind of the fallout and choices that had been made in the last one. You had the fallout of this takes place 3 years after the last one. So, of course, the last movie was 3 years ago. This one's now. Basically, things are not good. The company that ran the park is basically in shambles, if not gone, because there's one point early in the movie opens up. It's kind of like a BBC news report going on because the island it has a volcano there that has been extinct or dormant, I should say, and all of a sudden now it's active, and it's active to the point that when it blows, it's an apocalyptic event for the island. That island's going to be gone. So they're giving you the history with everything, and that basically the company that ran the park, Jurassic World, is gone because they got hit with like what was that? I think it was like $800 million in lawsuits.
Wow.
So yeah, they're still paying out money, and so they're dealing with there's a scene with Jeff Goldblum's character in front of Congress, and this is the brilliant part of the movie. The scene is split into two parts. Opening part, it's them talking about should we rescue them or what should we do about them, and Jeff Goldblum basically says, let it happen. We've shown that we've created this power that is a godlike power that we can't control it. And this is just we disrupted the course of history, and that this is nature's way of putting things back the way they were. Leave them there. So then the interesting thing happens is they bring back Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt's character is back they want to get some dinosaurs off the island, to save them and put them on this deserted island that there's no volcano, it's isolated, no way they can get off. It'll be fine. Well, of course, because it's this movie, they get double crossed. They end up taking 11 different species of dinosaurs off the island and to sell them off in an auction to the highest bidders of foreign countries.
See, this is why Jurassic World drives me nuts. Really, this is a good idea. Let's go make these into
Well, see, this is where I see where you're coming from, but you wait for the end of this.
No, go. I'm sorry.
It's interesting to see where they're going with this. So they get back to the mainland, and they're selling them off at auction for absurd amounts of money. And then you find out that, of course, at the beginning of the movie, there's a submarine that goes to the bottom of the water where Jurassic World was, and they get a bone from the Indominus Rex. Of course, the dinosaur they genetically spliced together in the last movie. They get a bone from it, and then they mix it together with some other stuff, and they create the Indominus Raptor, which it's basically a mix of the Indominus Rex and then Blue the Velociraptor that Chris Pratt trained. But it's got all the violence and all this stuff that the Indominus Rex had, but it's got they took the training that conveniently Chris Pratt documented the entire thing when he was training and raising Blue, so they've now installed it onto this thing. So basically the way this thing works is they take a rifle or an assault rifle and with a laser sight on it. Let's just say I'm pointing it at you. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden this thing locks in on it. And basically when this thing locks in on something, it ain't giving up until you're dead. Mm. And then there's like a sonic wave button attack or something that it tells it, get him. So of course it gets out. They eventually take it out. But then the interesting thing is there's like a toxic gas or something that's in the basement of this mansion where they're at. And it starts building up and they've got to let him out. And, Bryce Dallas Howard's character is thinking about letting him out. And Chris Pratt goes, listen, you got to realize if you do this, there's no going back. Like there's no fixing this. There's no going back. And she decides not to do it. Then another character decides, you know what? Got to do it. And they let him, and because her father is tied to one of the original scientists from the first movie, and they let him out. So now the movie ends with Jeff Goldblum's character coming back, and that's the scene where he's in Congress isn't taking place before the volcano erupts. It's after the volcano erupted and after everything has happened, and they're deciding what to do, because there's a scene where I don't think they say where the zoo is, but the T-Rex, the famous T-Rex from every movie, runs into a zoo, runs to the lion enclosure. There's a lion standing up on one side of the screen, like something out of Lion King, roaring, and the T-Rex is on the opposite side, staring the thing down. They're just screaming at each other. You've got scenes where I think they're going up the Pacific coast in California. There's pterodactyls flying. So, and then you've got a scene where Blue going, it looks like Nevada or New Mexico, someplace out that way, where Blue goes over a ridgetop and is looking out onto, a local suburban town. So now that's going to be the interesting thing going forward with dinosaurs are out. They're amongst us. What happens next?
See, for me, Jurassic World is not my cup of java. And I'm not hating on anybody that went to go see it. Like I say, it's just for me, I just think it's kind of just cliched writing.
Yeah, I mean,
which, like I said,
I enjoyed it. It wasn't like it had its flaws. I mean, there was one point where, like I said at the beginning, they're having a BBC News report about the volcano getting ready to erupt, and the footage they're showing is clearly not stock footage. And then so they smuggle all the dinosaurs off on this like military size sail barge boat type thing. And there's a scene where Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard character barely make it onto the boat because they're supposed to be dead. They're supposed to have been killed off, and the bad guys don't know it, and they drive a thing onto it. And Brad Guy brought this up. They drive the thing onto the back of the boat, and the whole boat rocks. And it's like, nobody thinks about that. But then the other thing of it is they sneak all the dinosaurs onto this thing. Okay, there was clearly a chopper with getting news footage around the island when it was getting ready to erupt. The thing is erupting that the entire island is now gone. You can't tell me that same news chopper wasn't around in the area and didn't see a boat leaving from the island when nobody was supposed to be there?
Yeah.
Like, it's got a couple issues. It's got a couple of plot flaws in my mind. It's still one of those ones that if you enjoyed the first one or the last one, you'll definitely enjoy this. Definitely go see it.
Yeah, like for me, like I said, I mean, I'm not hating on anybody that does like it, because you know what, like I said, everybody's got different tastes, and that's completely respectable. But for me, it's just too cliched for my liking. Now, that being said, I mean, it does sound very interesting from what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see where they go from here, because they're out. It's kind of like, you open Pandora's box, you can't put that lid back on.
Right, and it's got a unique take to it. I'll give it that. I mean, is it something I'll probably go see? Maybe, but I'm not really like gung-ho for it. But no, if you dug it, that's definitely worth checking out. So if you recommend it, hey, go check it out if you're into the dinosaurs. For me, a show came back on AMC this past week. It was not Walking Dead related.
Darn it.
It was not Comic Book Men, which I heard got canceled, by the way.
Really? Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, after
I didn't watch it all the time, but I turned it on.
I did like it, but I did hear something about it. I think there was something on their latest Smod podcast about it. No, this was Preacher that came back.
Yep.
Now, if you have never read the DC Vertigo book, I will just give fair warning. It is not for everybody. It is for mature audiences, and it is a lot of dark humor that you will probably find very offensive.
No, yeah. Then let me give a little behind the scenes. I have known our host for quite a while. If somebody asks him, "What do you think about this book? Should I read this book?" He will give you a recommendation based off of your tastes and what you like and what you don't like. So for him to go and say it's not for everybody, it's dark, and everything he's saying and about to say, it bears some listening to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great book. It's just a very crazy spaghetti western is probably the easiest way I can describe it when you're talking about the adventures of Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy. I'm just saying this. They are following the book to the letter on the show.
Okay.
And the book written by Garth Ennis is insane, crazy, and just there.
See, that's what I like about adaptations. I'm kind of numb. I don't know if that's the right word. It doesn't affect me as much when something I've read or took in gets adapted to a TV show or a movie and everything's not in it. Like, I know there's some people who, with the Harry Potter series are there's some stuff didn't get included. They're upset about, they're mad about. Yeah, there's some stuff I wish would have been in there, but the fact that it wasn't doesn't upset me. But it always does get some enjoyment from me when something is followed so faithfully. Yeah,
no, they definitely did a very good job about following the source material. I would say almost to the letter. I mean, there might be a little changes here and there, and especially for the subject matter they go in, which, I mean, like I said, if you are easily offended, this is not your book. There's certain books that, like I'll give a recommendation, but this is one that is a very acquired taste, to put it mildly. That there's just a lot of stuff on there that if you've never read the book, I recommend reading the book before you try the show. And if you like the book, because you can find it on trade paperback most places, it's only 75 issues, so you can definitely catch up on the series if you really wanted to. It's worth checking out, and then if you really like the style of it, it's like, for me, I'm not that easily offended by it. So, and I applaud that they're actually following the source material on the show to the degree they are, because I honestly thought when they put the show to paper there, I was going, there is no way they can get away with this on TV. No way.
Well, I mean, we thought the same thing with a lot of what Negan did.
Yeah, and I kudos to AMC for allowing them to do this, but I would tell you what, they're going further with Preacher than I thought they were going to do. So the season just came back, and yeah, I mean, they got right back into it. So not like they missed a step. So it's going to be very interesting to see where they go from here. I recommend it if you like a crazy spaghetti western. That's probably the easiest way I can describe it. And it's up there if you want to talk about mature readers' books. It is up there with Sandman, it being like the flagships of Vertigo back in the 90s. But I tell you what, it is not for everybody. So if you like your traditional superheroes, I would probably stay away from it. If you have a very unique sense of humor, you'll probably really enjoy it, and just kind of leave it at that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we got for this week. So for Mike C., you can check out on IAmHorror on Facebook, Real IAmHorror on Twitter. Definitely go hit him up. For Padawan J.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Ken. Thank you as always for listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour Entertainment Edition. We'll see you next time.